For more than a decade, the world has watched a Hollywood bond, once thought unbreakable, slowly unravel. No explanations, no headlines, just a haunting silence that left everyone guessing. Now, that silence has finally been shattered, and the truth is far more painful than anyone imagined. To the public, she was Suri Cruise, but away from the flashing cameras and glossy magazines, Suri Noel was a child growing up inside a spotlight she never chose, protected by secrecy, shaped by distance, and quietly pulled away from her father by forces far beyond her control. She was born into fame, surrounded by luxury, yet the man the world believed would always be there slowly became a fading presence. Now, at 19, she isn't speaking out. She isn't giving interviews. She isn't explaining herself. Instead, her choices are speaking for her, and they've left the public stunned, especially those who still remember the picture-perfect smiles and red carpet moments that once defined her childhood. This is the untold story of a daughter who learned to know her father from afar, and a father who, piece by piece, watched his only child quietly disappear from his world. It all started with a fantasy that felt ripped straight from a Hollywood script. Back in 2005, when Tom Cruise and Katie Holmes finally met, their connection instantly felt like a headline waiting to happen. At just 26, Katie was fresh off Dawson's Creek, glowing with rising star energy and the innocence of a small-town dreamer chasing big screens. Meanwhile, at 43, Tom stood untouchable, an established legend towering over modern cinema. From Top Gun to Jerry Maguire to Mission Impossible, his career was cinematic gold. But for Katie, this wasn't just a brush with fame. Years before their paths collided, she had told 17 magazine that marrying Tom Cruise was her ultimate dream, a wish that sounded playful, almost impossible, yet somehow fate was listening. Then, the moment everyone would talk about for years. When Tom first laid eyes on Katie, he reportedly turned to those around him and said, "I'm going to marry her." Unreal? Maybe, but in a matter of weeks, fantasy bled into reality. Their chemistry was electric, their attraction impossible to ignore. The world watched as their romance unfolded. Cameras caught them in Rome, hands entwined, laughter spilling like a soundtrack to a perfect love story. Tom, once controlled, private, became visibly swept away. And then came the moment no one could forget. On the Oprah Winfrey Show, Tom leapt onto the couch shouting, "I'm in love." Chaotic, unforgettable, and unmistakably Tom Cruise. Some viewers found it romantic, others deeply unsettling, but everyone kept watching. And on April 18th, 2006, the story took its next turn, the birth of their daughter, Suri. She wasn't just a baby, she was the living symbol of a romance that burned faster, brighter, and more impossibly than anyone could imagine. Tom called her birth the happiest moment he could ever imagine, a miracle that lit up his entire world. Every word he spoke about her dripped with awe, yet even this miracle was framed by the strict rules that governed his life, Scientology. For Katie, a Catholic schoolgirl from Toledo, it was a plunge into a world she barely understood. Her pregnancy and Suri's arrival followed the church's rigid customs, including a silent birth where even a whisper was forbidden in the delivery room. Obsessive to some, devoted to others, Tom bought a sonogram machine to monitor the pregnancy himself, watching every heartbeat as if guarding a treasure. Their wedding that November however, wasn't just a ceremony, it was a spectacle. Set in the 15th century Odescalchi Castle in Bracciano, Italy, it cost over $3 million, with Katie and Giorgio Armani and Tom beaming like a father watching his child's first steps. Hollywood royalty gathered, Jennifer Lopez, Will Smith, the Beckhams, all there to witness the fairy tale. But behind the dazzling smiles, Katie's parents were tense, uneasy about the church that now ruled her daughter's life. Their fears weren't unfounded. The fairy tale was shifting. Devotion for Tom, isolation for Katie, and for Suri, a childhood unlike any other had quietly begun. By 2007, Tom and Katie seemed untouchable, the golden family of Hollywood. Red carpets, glossy magazine covers, private jets, they were everywhere. The world saw perfection, a superstar, his glowing wife, and their angelic daughter. But behind the glitz, cracks were forming. Katie was rarely seen alone, always flanked by members of Tom's inner circle tied to Scientology. Even casual outings were shadowed, her every move quietly documented. The dream life, it was already starting to show its first shadows. It started with a quiet dinner, but the tension in the air was impossible to miss. Journalist Maureen Orth watched closely as Katie smiled at fans who approached their table, but then she dropped a line that stopped him cold. "Oh, we don't go outside very much." Innocent to most, yet to anyone familiar with Scientology's strict rules, it was a quiet alarm bell. Tom remained a force of nature, charismatic, confident, unshakable, and utterly devoted to Scientology. By this point, he wasn't just a Hollywood superstar, he was one of the church's most prominent ambassadors, defending its image and promoting its celebrity center at every turn. To him, Scientology wasn't a belief, it was discipline, salvation, and absolute truth. For Katie, it was a world she couldn't fully navigate. Her parents, Martin and Kathleen Holmes, grew increasingly concerned. Lifelong Catholics, they had always been wary of the church's secretive structure, and now they found themselves visiting less and less, unsure how to reach their daughter. Her friends noticed it too, the sparkle in Katie's personality dimming, replaced by mechanical praise for Tom. "He's amazing. He's wonderful." Meanwhile, Tom's adopted children with Nicole Kidman, Bella, and Connor were already steeped in Scientology, and naturally, he expected Suri to follow the same path. But Katie hesitated. She couldn't hand her daughter over to a system she didn't understand, a system that demanded total obedience. Slowly, almost invisibly, she began to pull away. By 2010, whispers surfaced. Katie felt trapped. She started skipping church events, reconnecting with old colleagues, and spending more time in New York without Tom. Behind closed doors, she was quietly gathering knowledge, quietly plotting a move that could change everything. By 2011, the illusion of a perfect Hollywood marriage was cracking, and no one could pretend otherwise. Katie's public smiles had grown stiff, her gestures cautious, almost rehearsed. What had once looked like a fairy tale now carried the weight of fear. Clutching her daughter's hand like a lifeline, she was already mapping an escape, one daring enough to shake the foundations of Tinseltown and expose the truth behind the perfect family. Then came the moment that stunned the world. On June 29, 2012, the headlines erupted. Katie Holmes had filed for divorce from Tom Cruise. The timing was precise, cold, deliberate, and just days before Tom's 50th birthday. This wasn't just a divorce, it was a meticulously planned rescue mission. Later, Tom admitted he had been blindsided. "It hit me like a freight train," he said quietly in an interview. "Life can throw you curveballs when you least expect them." Behind the scenes, Katie had orchestrated every step with surgical precision. She changed phones, shuffled her staff, and hired new security, cutting off anyone who might be reporting back to Scientology. Every move was calculated, every day mapped out. Her father, Martin Holmes, became her silent strategist. Years earlier, he had drafted her prenup. Now he used it as a shield to secure her freedom. Katie set her sights on New York, fully aware the courts favored parents seeking sole custody. While Tom filmed Oblivion in Iceland, she quietly filed her papers, her escape hidden in plain sight. When the world and Tom saw the headlines, the shock was palpable. For a man accustomed to total control, it was an unprecedented defeat. Court documents later revealed the scope of her plan: full custody of 6-year-old Suri, authority over her education, healthcare, and religion. Katie's move was deliberate, protective, and irreversible, a masterclass in quiet rebellion. What truly terrified Katie was never the man beside her. It was the unseen power tightening its grip around her child. That power was the church. According to former Scientologists, Katie believed Suri could eventually be drawn into the organization's elite CEO program, a risk she was unwilling to take under any circumstance. And then, almost without warning, the conflict vanished as fast as it appeared. Just 11 days later, the divorce was sealed shut. The agreement required Tom to pay $400,000 annually in child support, ensuring Suri's care until adulthood, along with health coverage, insurance, and education. Still, the settlement was never about dollars or figures. What Katie fought for was separation, complete and irreversible in every sense of the word. Less than 24 hours later, she and Suri were gone from Los Angeles. When they finally surfaced again, it was on the streets of New York City, where photographers spotted them walking through Chelsea, fingers intertwined. There were no handlers trailing behind them, no security teams, no perfectly choreographed public appearances. Katie looked drained, but something else was there too: relief. And when she smiled, it carried a truth no camera trick could fake. It was the first genuine smile she had shown in years. For Suri, liberation didn't come with headlines or speeches. The father who once paraded her down red carpets and called her a miracle simply vanished from her daily world. There was no shouting, no courtroom spectacle, just absence. And within that quiet void, a life beyond control finally took shape, one untouched by Hollywood or Scientology. Then, the silence stretched into years. Once the divorce ended, Tom's life and Suri's life separated completely, never to overlap again. In 2013, during a rare deposition tied to an unrelated lawsuit, Tom faced a question he clearly resented. Had Katie left him to shield Suri from Scientology? He reacted sharply, labeling the question offensive before conceding it was listed among the claims. It was the nearest he ever came to confirming the rift. That same year, reports emerged that he had seen Suri just once since the divorce, in a short, private encounter. After that, the trail went cold. No photographs, no verified visits, no public acknowledgement of any kind. As time moved on, Tom buried himself in his career. Mission Impossible films multiplied. Top Gun Maverick soared. Worldwide premieres followed. Gravity-defying stunts became his signature. With every cliff jump and airborne risk, audiences roared in approval. The spectacle never stopped. Yet beyond the applause and flashing lights, his youngest daughter was growing up without him, outside the frame, beyond reach, and quietly erased from his life. While cameras stayed glued to Hollywood chaos, Katie was making a far quieter move, one that mattered more than headlines, giving her daughter a real childhood. Instead of paparazzi and premieres, there were early school mornings in Manhattan, slow walks through neighborhood parks, dance rehearsals, cafe stops, and rhythms that felt refreshingly normal. People close to the family would later describe Suri as warm, intelligent, and unusually steady for someone born into worldwide fame. That balance didn't happen by chance. Katie deliberately kept the glare of celebrity from crossing their front door. With time, the resemblance between mother and daughter became impossible to miss. Their eyes matched, their shy smiles mirrored each other. Even their calm, self-directed nature felt identical. Yet one topic was always carefully avoided. If her father's name ever came up, Suri would quietly redirect the moment. In public, Tom mirrored that silence. He stopped mentioning her entirely. Privately, sources insisted he still paid for her schooling and medical needs. Even so, the absence was striking. Year after year passed with no images, no visits, no shared milestones. Despite his global fame, he remained a distant figure in his own child's story. It was as if their lives slowly drifted into separate galaxies, moving farther apart with every year. Different habits formed, different worlds took shape. By 2021, Suri was no longer defined by her last name, she was defining herself. She gained admission to New York's prestigious LaGuardia High School of Music and Art and Performing Arts, the legendary institution behind fame. Inside its walls, she explored acting, singing, and even directing, carving out her own creative voice alongside her peers. Then came a choice so subtle it spoke volumes. When the program for her senior musical, The Addams Family, was printed, her name appeared differently. Suri Noel, not Suri Cruise. This wasn't a performance gimmick, it was a declaration. And when graduation arrived in June 2024, the records made it official. Suri Noel was who she had chosen to be. Tom was absent. He was an ocean away, photographed enjoying a Taylor Swift concert in London. For those who remembered the devoted father once paraded in public, the distance felt jarring. Katie, on the other hand, was exactly where she'd always been, sitting among ordinary parents in New York, applauding softly, wiping away tears no one else noticed. Her daughter had stepped into adulthood, without the armor of Hollywood fame, without the spotlight's protection, and without her father by her side. That summer wasn't marked by flashing headlines. It quietly announced Suri's first step towards independence. Stepping onto the Carnegie Mellon campus in Pittsburgh, she chose fashion as her path, with Katie lifting boxes herself, proving that normal life still existed. No cameras followed, no entourage waited, just a mother and daughter quietly claiming space in a world that once demanded spectacle. By fall, the spotlight returned to Katie, but behind the camera this time, as she directed Happy Hours and reunited with her old Dawson's Creek co-star Joshua Jackson. On the set in 2025, Suri appeared, 19, composed, radiating self-assurance in khaki pants, a white tank top, and red sneakers. The world hardly noticed, but she radiated one unmistakable truth. Her past would not define her future. Suri Noel was no longer a name tethered to headlines. She was a young woman writing her own story. Then came a scene no paparazzi captured, but spoke volumes. In October 2025, she sat on a New York doorstep, head in her hands, lost in thought. Exhaustion visible in every line. Moments later, Katie arrived in an Uber, sliding gently next to her, wrapping her in quiet reassurance. They spoke softly, then strolled together towards pastries, their bond speaking louder than words. To outsiders, it looked simple. To anyone who knew their story, it was monumental, a reminder that their connection had survived the storm and remained unbreakable. Now 19, Suri is a sophomore studying fashion, writing music, and shaping the life she's always wanted, step by step. Her father's presence is absent, but the freedom she's claiming, that chapter belongs entirely to her. Even after more than a decade apart, he continues to cover her tuition and medical bills, but public appearances or conversations between them remain non-existent. Meanwhile, Tom is reaching heights beyond Hollywood. He's setting his sights on outer space. Partnering with NASA and SpaceX, the man who once dominated the silver screen now aims to leave Earth behind entirely. No amount of ambition can seem to close the gap between him and his youngest daughter. The distance might be unbridgeable. Those close to the family reveal that Katie has devoted herself to keeping bitterness away, focusing instead on gratitude and personal growth. She praises Suri as an exceptional young woman, calling her independence and resilience her proudest accomplishments. Even with a fresh identity and a life far from the spotlight, Suri carries the weight of a story larger than herself, a narrative of love, control, and fame's hidden costs. For 19 years, this family's drama has unfolded like a film without a finale, a father delivering unforgettable performances and a daughter quietly escaping his shadow to find her own path. As Suri Noel shapes her future, one question remains. Will she ever allow her father back into her life, or is this silence permanent? Can time truly mend a gap created by years of separation, or are some divides simply too vast to overcome? What's your take on this story? Share your thoughts in the comments.